My grandmother had been dead for 6 days when I let 3 strangers into her house, and by the time I realized who they really were, they'd already changed the locks. She passed away in her sleep. Everybody kept calling it a blessing, a peaceful way to go. Maybe it was, but that still left my aunt and me standing in a farmhouse outside Dayton, trying to figure out what to do with 60 years of someone else's life. Every closet was full, every drawer, every shelf. Neither of us had ever handled an estate sale before. We had no idea where to start. Then, at the funeral home, we found a flyer sitting beside the guest book, tucked between sympathy cards and flower arrangements. Heritage and Heart Estate Services. Licensed, bonded. Compassionate liquidation for families in transition. My aunt called the number before we even left the parking lot. 2 days later, they showed up. 3 people. A woman named Carol and 2 younger guys who barely said a word. They wore matching navy polos with a small embroidered logo on the chest. Professional looking. Clean. Exactly what you'd expect. Carol did all the talking. She had one of those soft, practiced voices that instantly makes you feel like everything is under control. The kind of voice you'd want from someone helping sort through your grandmother's belongings. She explained the process. Inventory everything. Photograph it. Research values. Run the estate sale. Take a percentage. Simple, professional, routine. Honestly, it felt like a relief. For the first time since the funeral, somebody seemed to know what they were doing. So we let them take over. The first day felt completely normal. Carol moved through the living room and kitchen with a tablet in her hand, murmuring values as she worked. Depression glass, maybe $40 for the set. This dresser's veneer, not solid wood. Won't bring much. My aunt followed her around, nodding along, asking questions, taking notes. The 2 younger guys photographed everything and entered information into their tablets. Efficient, quiet, professional. Nothing about it felt strange. Not yet. I left them downstairs and headed upstairs to start sorting through closets on my own, just trying to stay busy, trying not to think about why I was there. At the time, I thought the hardest part of that week was going to be saying goodbye to my grandmother's things. I had no idea the real problem had already walked through the front door. The first thing that really bothered me happened on the second day, and even then, I almost talked myself out of it. I asked about my grandmother's jewelry box. Nothing expensive, just a wooden box she'd kept for years. Inside was a cameo brooch I remembered from when I was a kid. One of the younger guys answered before Carol could, without even looking up from his tablet. He said, "That's already been logged for Saturday's sale, ma'am." I remember staring at him, because I hadn't seen anyone log it. I hadn't even seen the jewelry box since they'd arrived. For a second, I considered pushing the issue. Then I didn't, because grief does strange things to your memory. At least, that's what I told myself. Later that afternoon, I went looking for something else, a safe deposit key. My grandmother kept it in an old coffee tin inside the pantry. The lawyer needed it for some bank paperwork. The coffee tin was exactly where it had always been. The key wasn't. I mentioned it to my aunt, and before I'd even finished the sentence, Carol appeared in the doorway. She had a weird habit of doing that, just appearing, like she'd been listening from somewhere nearby. She smiled and said the key had probably been misplaced years ago, that it happened all the time with elderly clients. Then she gently suggested we focus on what was still there, instead of worrying about things that might be gone. As she spoke, she rested a hand on my aunt's shoulder, and I watched my aunt immediately relax, like someone had flipped a switch. I didn't. The longer they were in that house, the more something felt off. Every time I tried to verify an inventory number, every time I wanted to double-check a room, Carol somehow redirected the conversation. "Linda, can you help me identify this? Linda, can you tell me if this has sentimental value? Linda, can you come look at something upstairs?" And somehow, I'd always end up standing alone, looking at an empty shelf or an empty drawer, trying to remember what had been there before. The worst part was I wasn't completely sure. Things were disappearing. I knew they were. but I couldn't prove it. That night, I couldn't sleep, not even close. I sat in the kitchen staring at one of their business cards, reading it over and over. Eventually, I decided to look the company up myself, just to make myself feel better. The business existed. The phone number matched, mostly. There was just one problem. The area code was different. Not completely different, just different enough. The number on the website wasn't the number Carol had been calling from all weekend. Maybe there was a simple explanation. A work phone, a personal cell, anything. But by then, I didn't trust my instincts anymore, and that scared me. So I walked outside, got into my car, parked halfway down the driveway where nobody in the house could hear me. Then I dialed the number listed on the company's website, and the person who answered changed everything. A man answered the phone. He sounded confused almost immediately. I asked if this was Heritage and Heart Estate Services. He said yes. I asked about Carol. There was a pause. Then he said he had no idea who I was talking about. No Carol worked there. No crew was operating near Dayton. And as far as he knew, nobody from the company had been assigned to any job remotely resembling ours. At first, I thought maybe he'd pulled up the wrong records. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. The owner, the woman whose name appeared on every piece of paperwork Carol had shown us, the woman listed on the business cards, the contracts, everything. She was dead, killed in a car accident 2 weeks earlier. The man explained he'd only recently started answering her old business line, trying to sort through unfinished jobs and messages. That's why he picked up. I don't remember ending the call. I just remember sitting in my car, staring through the windshield, trying to process what I'd just heard. Eventually, I went back inside, and I didn't tell my aunt. Not yet. Because at that point, I didn't know who these people really were, and I didn't know what they'd do if they realized I'd figured it out. So I acted normal. At least, I tried to. Instead of talking, I watched, really watched, for the first time since they'd arrived. The truck sitting in the driveway, the one I'd assumed belonged to the company, had no logo, no business name, nothing, just a plain white box truck. And it was already half full. Furniture wrapped in moving blankets, tables, chairs, boxes, items we hadn't approved for sale, items nobody had even discussed. That was when the fears started feeling real. Not vague, not suspicious. Real. I pulled my aunt aside and kept my voice low. Told her I thought we should stop everything. Bring in another company. Get a second opinion, just to be safe. The second I said it, Carol looked at me, and her entire expression changed. Not angry. Honestly, I would have preferred angry. This was worse. Everything just went flat, like someone had switched off whatever personality she'd been wearing. She said that wouldn't be possible, said we'd signed a contract, said backing out now could expose us to legal action, a breach of agreement lawsuit, her exact words. Then she smiled, not warmly, not reassuringly, just enough to show teeth, and said it would be in everyone's best interest to let the team finish today's walkthrough. That's when I noticed one of the younger guys. He was standing near the front door, not blocking it, not exactly, just standing there, watching, like he already knew nobody was leaving. I told Carol I needed coffee from my car. Just coffee, nothing more. Immediately she smiled and said she'd send one of the guys with me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I smiled back, told her that wasn't necessary, told her I knew where my own car was, tried to sound relaxed, tried to sound normal. Somehow she let it go, and I walked outside. The second I was out of sight, I kept walking, past my car, past the driveway, all the way down to the county road. Earlier that morning, I'd seen a road crew patching potholes nearby. I was praying they were still there. They were. I practically jogged up to them, asked to borrow a phone, and when they handed me one, I called 911. I remember exactly what I told the dispatcher. 3 strangers were inside my dead grandmother's house, and I didn't think they were who they claimed to be. About 20 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. By then, the truck was gone. Carol was gone too, just disappeared. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing. The 2 younger guys were still inside, calm as ever, walking from room to room, tagging furniture, making notes, like this was a completely normal workday. When the deputies started asking questions, the 2 men looked at them exactly the way they'd looked at me. Polite, patient, almost amused. Like none of this was unusual. Like they fully expected everything to work out. Later, the deputies confirmed what the man on the phone had told me. The real owner of Heritage and Hart had died 2 weeks earlier. A car accident on Interstate 75. Her obituary had been published publicly. Full name, business name, photograph, everything, including a picture of her standing in front of the company logo, the same logo Carol had stitched onto those polo shirts. The deputies never found Carol, not that I'm aware of, and they never gave us a clear answer about how much property disappeared before we stopped them. But honestly, that's not the part that stays with me. People steal things. That's nothing new. What keeps bothering me is how they found us. How they knew exactly when a family would be vulnerable. Exactly when nobody would be thinking clearly. Because somebody sat down, read an obituary, saw a grieving family, and saw an opportunity. And I still wonder how many obituaries they read that week. How many funeral homes they visited. How many flyers they quietly placed beside guest books and sympathy cards. How many families called that number, thinking help had arrived. Because that's the part that scares me. Not what they stole. Not the truck. Not the fake contracts. It's how easily they blended into one of the worst days of someone's life. Like they belonged there. Like they had been invited. And for a little while, we believed they had. Three weeks after moving into my house, I found a lawn chair in my backyard. Not a patio chair, not something that belonged with the property, just a single folding chair, opened up and facing my back door, like somebody had been sitting there, watching the house. I remember standing there for a second, trying to convince myself it wasn't strange. Maybe I'd forgotten about it. Maybe it had come with the house. Maybe there was some completely normal explanation. Then I remembered something important. I didn't own a folding chair. I checked the garage, the shed, every corner of the property. Nothing matched it. No other chairs, no packaging, nothing. Just that one chair sitting in the yard, facing the back door. The more I looked at it, the less I liked it, because it wasn't tossed aside, wasn't knocked over, wasn't abandoned. It looked placed, deliberately. I ended up calling the non-emergency police line, not because I thought a crime had happened. Honestly, I wasn't even sure what I was reporting, a suspicious chair, but it felt like the responsible thing to do, so I called. An officer came out later that afternoon, walked the property with me, checked the fence line, looked at the gate latch, asked a few questions. Then he gave me the explanation everyone gives when they don't have a better one. Probably left behind by the previous owner. The house had belonged to an older man who'd passed away the year before. No close family, no kids, no one really handling the estate, just a property management company that eventually sold the place. The officer shrugged and said somebody probably missed it during cleanup. A forgotten lawn chair, nothing more. At the time, that explanation sounded reasonable enough, so I folded the chair up, dragged it into the garage, and tried not to think about it anymore. Looking back, I really wish that chair had been the strangest thing I found in that backyard. That explanation worked for about a day. Then I mentioned the chair to my next-door neighbor while we were both getting our mail. The second I brought it up, she got quiet. Not scared, just uncomfortable. Like she'd suddenly realized something she wasn't sure she should say. Then she asked, "You didn't know about that?" I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. I'd only lived there 3 weeks. She looked back toward my yard and said people used to see someone walking the fence line at night before the house sold. Not often, just every once in a while. A figure moving along the back of the property, usually late, usually too dark to get a good look. According to her, everyone assumed it was somebody who'd known the old owner. Maybe a friend, maybe a relative, someone checking on the place out of habit after he passed away. Nobody ever got close enough to find out. Nobody ever spoke to him. And eventually, people stopped talking about it. I laughed it off, at least outwardly. Then I went home, folded the chair up, and shoved it into the garage. Told myself that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 nights later, I came downstairs for a glass of water. The house was dark except for the microwave clock. Everything looked normal, until I noticed the kitchen junk drawer. It was open, just an inch or so, but open. That drawer always stays shut. The latch is weak, so I make a point of pushing it closed every time. It's one of those stupid little habits you don't even think about. I stood there, staring at it longer than I probably should have. Then I pushed it shut and went back upstairs, telling myself I'd left it open. Because that explanation was easier. The next morning, I found something else. The porch light was off. I put it on a timer the week I moved in. Same schedule every night. On at dusk, off at sunrise. When I checked the switch, it had been flipped to manual. I don't remember touching it, but by then I was questioning everything. Every memory, every routine, every little detail. That week I had a new deadbolt installed, mostly for peace of mind. The locksmith checked the old one before replacing it, looked over the frame, the strike plate, the hinges, everything. When he finished, he shrugged, said there was nothing unusual, no damage, no scratches, no signs anyone had ever tried to force their way inside. For some reason, that bothered me more than if he'd found something. Because if nobody was forcing their way in, then I had no idea how things kept changing when I wasn't looking. By that point, I was done guessing, done telling myself everything had a normal explanation. So I bought a trail camera. One of those cheap battery-powered ones hunters use for deer. Nothing fancy, just something that would tell me if somebody was actually coming into my yard at night. I zip-tied it to a fence post facing the back door, tested it twice, made sure it worked. Then I waited. 2 mornings later, I checked it. The camera was dead. Not turned off, dead. The batteries were completely drained. That made no sense. Those batteries were supposed to last for weeks. Maybe months, not 48 hours. I pulled the memory card anyway. There was only one usable clip, just one. The timestamp showed a little after 2 a.m. The image quality was terrible. Mostly darkness, fence, grass, nothing else. Then a shape crossed the edge of the frame. Low to the ground, moving along the fence line. The exact direction my neighbor had described. No face. No details, nothing identifiable. Whoever it was kept their head down the entire time, like they already knew exactly where the camera was. I watched the clip over and over. It never got clearer. After that, I started locking the detached garage every night too, not just the house, everything. About a week later, I went out there looking for some gardening tools. The garage smelled like dust and old gasoline. Completely normal, until I looked behind the lawnmower. There was a folded moving blanket pushed into the back corner, one of those thick padded blankets movers use. Not mine. I'd never seen it before. Next to it was a flattened patch in the dust, a long one, like something had been lying there more than once. I just stood there, staring at it, trying to figure out what I was looking at. Trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it had been left behind after the estate sale. Maybe nobody had checked every corner before I bought the place. Maybe I'd somehow missed it. The problem was, the garage had been locked the entire time. I checked the lock immediately. No damage, no scratches, no signs anyone had forced it. it was still locked when I found the blanket. That bothered me enough that I almost called somebody. But who? And what was I supposed to say? So, once again, I convinced myself to let it go. A few days later, something else happened. Something small, but by then, every small thing felt bigger than it should. I woke up freezing. The house felt cold enough that I could see my breath. When I checked the thermostat, it was set to 60. I always kept it around 68. Always. I turned it back up. Figured maybe I'd bumped it by accident. Maybe the thermostat was acting up. Maybe I was tired. Then it happened again, 2 nights later, almost the exact same time. And that was the moment I stopped wondering if something was wrong, because somebody, or something, was getting a little more comfortable inside that house than I was. That's when I remembered something the realtor had said during the walkthrough, something I'd completely forgotten about. There was a flower pot beside the side door, and apparently the previous owner used to keep a spare key underneath it. The realtor had laughed when she mentioned it, said it almost like a funny little story. "Just so you know," she'd said, "in case you ever lock yourself out." I had never bothered checking it, never moved the pot, never thought about it again. Until that night. I went outside with a flashlight, lifted the flower pot, and immediately felt my stomach drop. The pot was there, the key wasn't. I called the police again the next morning, filed another report, walked them through everything from the beginning. The chair, the garage, the thermostat, the camera footage, all of it. They dusted around the garage door, checked a few things, took notes. Then they gave me the answer I was already expecting. Without forced entry, without anything actually stolen, there wasn't much they could do. I remember asking one of the officers what I was supposed to do in the meantime. He told me to document everything, install cameras, get a security system. So that's exactly what I did. Within a week, I had cameras covering every entrance to the house. Front door, back door, garage, everything. For 9 days, nothing happened. No movement, no strange lights, no open drawers, nothing. And slowly, I started relaxing. Started convincing myself whoever it was had finally given up. Maybe once the old key stopped working, they moved on. Then the 10th night happened. At 11:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, front door camera. I checked the live feed before I'd even gotten out of bed. Nobody was standing on the porch. Nobody near the door. Nothing. Then I saw it, a pair of shoes, just shoes, stepping out of frame, moving quickly toward the side of the house. Whoever it was never showed their face, never paused, never looked toward the camera. It almost looked intentional, like they already knew exactly where the camera's blind spot began and exactly how to avoid it. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. Before sunrise, I packed a bag, left the house, and stayed with a friend for 4 days while I figured out what I was going to do. When I finally came back, I didn't come alone. My friend's husband came with me. From the outside, everything looked normal. No broken windows, no damaged doors, nothing disturbed. Inside was the same, exactly how I'd left it. Every room, every drawer, every piece of furniture. For a while, I actually thought maybe I'd imagined the worst of it. Then we walked into the backyard. And there it was, the folding chair. The same one. Not in the garage where I'd left it. Not folded, not tucked away. Set up. Waiting. Almost exactly where I'd found it the first time. Except this time, it wasn't facing the back door. It was facing the house. More specifically, it was facing one window. My bedroom window. Upstairs. Like whoever had been sitting there didn't care about getting inside anymore. They already knew where I slept.